welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and I'm thrilled to have you guys with me on this week's episode, which is going to be focused on embracing imperfection. I just wanted to give a special shout out to the watchers on YouTube. I have read the comments, I have listened. I know that you guys actually really enjoyed seeing the little montages of the forestry and all of that, and it felt like you guys were taking a walk with me. So throughout this video, I'm going to slip in some clips and see. You guys let me know how you feel about it in the comments. I'm going to try to do it in a nice, unseemly, natural, flowy way. But, we learn and we grow and we'll go from there. But I hope that you guys enjoy the, different editing on this week's episode. Now with that, so this week I was inspired to make this episode because in the past few days, I've kind of found myself trying to put a little bit less effort into what I look like. And what I mean by this is I'm typically someone who likes to build outfits, craft outfits, and, I'm really conscious of the way that fashion and makeup and just the way that you present yourself, helps your confidence and helps boost the way that you're going to lead through your day and the way that you carry yourself and the impact that it has. And I feel like this week there were a couple days where I was thinking to myself, you know what? I don't need to slay every day. I don't need to slay every day. I can show up as myself. It was like a weird weather week, as well as the fact that I had just come back from a weekend trip and I was exhausted. I was thinking, you know what? I don't even have it in me right now to try to craft a really great outfit. I don't know where half of my clothes are. Some of them are over here, some of them are over here. I was like, I don't care anymore. And with that, I also kind of had this thing in the back of my mind of thinking, okay, real baddies slay even on the bad days. I'm thinking baddies don't need to slay every day. A real baddie, that's a mindset, and I'm not saying baddies only, right? You can also just think of this as confidence. Confidence should shine through whether you're dressed to the nines, and you should also have that confidence and feel that way when you are dressed in a burlap sack, right? And I was thinking back to a conversation I had with a friend too, where, somebody had told Marilyn Monroe apparently that she would be ugly if she were in a burlap sack or in a potato sack or something like that. And then she had this entire photo shoot of her slaying and looking amazing in a literal potato sack. And, with all of this swarming on my mind, I was like, okay, how can we embrace imperfection? And also, why are we so afraid of showing up in an imperfect way? And so I was thinking that sometimes our minds, it can become very clouded, and it can almost become a stressful thing to try to keep up with a certain standard. So when I'm thinking about my example of, dressing really well for work, for school, whatever, and, I'm keeping myself up to the standard, every outfit's got to be better than the last, or I can't, outfit repeating is great, but I want to be more creative with it, especially as I'm learning more about fashion and listening to this podcast called Stylish About Fashion. I'm thinking, I'm a fashion girly, I should really be stepping it up. And so it can become stressful when you keep yourself to a very specific standard, a certain homogeneity, of your art, whether that be fashion, whether that be your work, whether that be your, your other art mediums, such as, painting, sculpture, whatever it may be. It can be difficult to kind of sit back for a day, think to myself, okay, today I don't need to produce a Picasso. Today I can create a stick figure, and, that's just what I produce today, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I feel like we almost have this innate fear of working backwards, right? Why should I create a bad outfit when I know that I can create a good one? Why should I push myself out of my comfort zone when I know that this formula works? Why would I do something different? And so it all led me into kind of it led me to think about some of my favorite fashion creators as well. And something that came to mind was Wisdom K. I don't know if you guys know him, but he is huge on TikTok for creating the most outrageous like crazy outfits. He did a video that was dressing as different countries. He did Brazil, Japan, Nigeria, USA, France, Ireland. Like, he did all of these different countries. And how would you even think about dressing for a country without just thinking of the trends in that country? He's thinking outside of the box. And I think that he kind of came forth and grew during COVID. And I think back to his videos during COVID, and some of these outfits, I was like, whoa, what is that? What is that? What are you making? What does that even look like? What type of garment is that? I've never seen anything like it before. And I realized, great artistry and great creation comes from trial and error. You can't think outside the box and do something innovative and something different without first straying from your formula, straying from that perfect, something that is going to lead to a good result. That's not going to lead to any type of novelty, right? And so something I think about, when I think of imperfection, typically I'm thinking, lack of perfection, obviously, lack of beauty, lack of polishedness, unpreparedness. But what it truly is natural, transient, unexpected. So when I did a little bit more research, I was trying to find, works that could lead me, maybe even a philosophical, ideal to bring to you guys about imperfection and its role in our viewpoint of life. I stumbled upon a Japanese philosophy. So what Wabi Sabi really means is in its appreciation for the beauty of impermanence, of imperfection, and of time passing and what that does to creations, whether that's human beings, whether that's physical things. And Wabi Sabi is often discussed from the viewpoint of minimalism and in the world of architecture and home design. But what it really is an entire Japanese philosophy. And so we saw that its evolution really took a turn throughout history. And when it was initially proposed, I believe it was in the form of their tea ceremonies for monks who did their meditations. Again, I'm no expert on the subject. You guys should definitely check out the YouTube channel Zen to Manabi. He does great videos on the subject, and I'll delve a little bit deeper into that later. But what I really appreciated from that is how Wabi Sabi is actually a derivative of Buddhism, in that it's also all about how wisdom comes with time, wisdom comes with imperfections, wisdom comes with the understanding that things are not going to stay as they are forever. Perfection is not sustainable. And understanding that and finding peace within that, that's where wisdom is born. So Wabi actually meant, at its inception, it meant the loneliness and the misery that comes with living in nature away from human beings, away from society, and kind of what that solitude and isolation will do to one's psyche. Now, it kind of shifted from that into kind of an understanding for the bittersweet melancholy that comes with solitude. Now, Sabi is actually also had a transient definition where it started up as a description for something withered, something that has become old, something that has become imperfect, really. And it has now shifted into something that is a marker and shows the noble signs of time. It adds character to that certain thing. So when we're looking at its place, Wabi Sabi's place in home design, or when it comes to tea ceremonies, which is closely related to the history of the philosophy as a whole, we're seeing it come up in the utensils that are used in the tea ceremony. So for example, an example that was drawn in the history video by the School of Life was that initially these tea ceremonies were brought upon with these very beautiful, very high profile, ceramics that were made in China that displayed status in these gorgeous rooms with beautiful surroundings. And it was a show of wealth, it was a show of prosperity, and it became kind of an almost a flag for, listen, I can afford this. This is a privilege. And then as we kind of, as the philosophy grew, And I believe there was a particular shift in the tea ceremonies and how they were held, in that eventually what was actually preferred was using dishes that were often used by people who weren't as well off. And that became a major part of these tea ceremonies as well, because at the end of the day, they were trying to appreciate the natural. And it shifted away from having this, display of wealth and prosperity into something that invites us to look within. Now, in home design, what we'll often see is an appreciation for, something that has been broken and melded back together. An example that was drawn in that video as well was, for example, if you have a beautiful bowl that has been shattered, having it put back together and appreciating the beauty of it in that state, as well, with the signs of it having fallen, it invites us to look at the journey of something's evolution as something to be proud of and something to be noticed as beautiful. So when I started this episode, I was thinking about how to appreciate imperfection, and it kind of really took a turn when I discovered this entire concept of Wabi Sabi. And I'm thinking, wow, this is actually something that can really be applied to life in general. When I turned to the YouTube channel called Zen to Manabi, I came to the realization of how, broad the philosophy of Wabi Sabi really is. At first I thought it was, something that was more geared towards interior design and architecture, because of the examples that were drawn in some of the research that I did referring to or comparing Western architecture to Eastern architecture. And, in the Greeks and in ancient Western societies, what was truly valued was symmetry and perfection and polishedness. And instead, we're seeing how this evolution of the tea ceremony kind of impacted and shaped the Japanese culture into kind of where it is today. Now, something that I found interesting about his video in particular was how he was drawing the conclusion that Wabi Sabi is actually a question of life and death. And while this actually goes further than the initial topic of having to embrace imperfection, a lot of the things that he had to say really stuck with me. I think in today's societal, culture, the culture of the red light therapy, skincare, and anti-aging, serums and Botox and, filler, as well as, that cryo, cold therapy that people do, that is supposed to make your body burn thousands of calories just by standing there in the cold. We've got a lot of things in this Western society of ours that is really geared towards anti-aging, refusing to succumb to the natural process of life. And when we see this, pushed to us through this capitalistic, society of constantly searching for the next cure, the next thing that might really help us in this fight against the clock, the ticking clock that is our bodies, it can be easy to succumb to that type of mindset and frame of mind of thinking, okay, I really should be worried about this. I should be focusing on what I eat so that I can remain looking 30 when I'm 60. I need to be focusing on ways to, keep my, skin tight and lifted, and maybe I should sleep with chin tape, and also maybe I should put some nose tape on. Oh, I need to do this. I need my nighttime routine is now 16 different steps. It can be easy to succumb to that frame of mind and thinking, I need to find and I need to stay on this hamster wheel and catch up. I need to catch up to the trend. And I listened to this podcast that I love, and it's Sophia and Cinzia, and they decided they were talking about how now there's SPF 100. SPF 100. Who had even heard of that, right? And it's thick, very, very thick. And I'm thinking, okay, we are afraid of the sun. We don't go in the sun. We're not even really enjoying ourselves anymore because everything has to be preventative and protective. And helping us, fight against aging. And this does not only apply to aging. I feel like this is also seen in creative standpoints as well. When it comes to anti-aging, what we're really trying to do is remain young. We're trying to stay in the same place. We like where we are right now, so we want to stay exactly as we are right now, right? Whether you are 18, whether you're 22, often it's thinking, I need to look exactly like I do right now, and thus I'm going to lean into all of these external, devices and chemicals that is going to help me remain the same. Now, creatively, this can also be found where you're seeing a lot of creators kind of stick to the same formula. When you do research, what you'll find into how to build a following or how to build your brand or how to find your niche when it comes, not everybody wants to be an influencer, but I feel like it is a common profession that people are kind of leaning towards. And I think it is relevant to the conversation in that there always is a question of what is your niche, what is your formula, find your formula and stick to that formula. And what we're doing is, again, trying to lean towards stagnation, towards keeping up that engagement. And in order to do so, you need to seem familiar, right? I feel like, I don't know if that completely made sense in my wording, but the element of stagnation remaining the same is seen in all of these examples. But what Wabi Sabi invites us to think about is the beauty in that transition, the beauty in that evolution from one medium of art into a new medium of art, finding that self-expression across different standpoints, but it also means embracing aging, embracing wrinkles, embracing the gift that time gives us, which is wisdom, which is experience that might leave you some scars, but experience that adds to your breadth of understanding of yourself, of those around you, of the society that you live in, of other societies. Time gives us that wisdom, and time leads to change. It leads to this witheredness, or whatever the initial definition of Sabi once was. But another definition that I saw, and I'll put up the man on TikTok's name here, because I thought it was actually a really great TikTok and that it gave us a pretty good understanding of Wabi Sabi. And what he was kind of getting at was that Wabi is to be understood as the appreciation for the journey, the appreciation for transition, the appreciation for impermanence. While Sabi is melancholy. It's a bittersweet notion of a certain experience. Put together, we have the appreciation for the imperfectness of this kind of melancholic and transitory and impermanent and imperfect space. You cannot have this appreciation and that understanding of that beauty without having that imperfectness, without having that transition, without having that time and that wisdom. And that melancholic, bittersweet sense, is difficult to sit within without understanding that there is beauty to be found in it and appreciation to be found in it. And so both are almost yin and yang, right? They are melded together. But coming back to my whole experience this week with experimenting with my outfits and doing something different and, putting a little bit less care into my appearance, right? I feel like what I was led to think about is the role of confidence and the impact that imperfection has on confidence, right? And I don't think that it is as traditional as we think it is. When you think about wearing a really bad outfit and I'm saying like mixed matched colors, textures are all over the place. Maybe your hair is not done. Maybe your shoes don't match your jacket at all. This might not resonate with anyone, but I'm sure it'll resonate with one person where I feel like at the very base, I need at least a monochromatic all black outfit and then I can go from there. But when the pants were a different, I don't know. It was a really, really weird fashion day, but I was thinking to myself, you know what? I am playing my music. I am walking my strut. I am working with the imperfection. I'm working with this ugly outfit. Let's call it what it was. It was an ugly outfit, but I'm thinking to myself, I know what's in here. I know what I'm capable of. And so what I'm showing up as doesn't define me. And I think that what Wabi Sabi, as well as this whole, experiment of not having to keep up with this hamster wheel that I put myself on, is that you're going to build more confidence in yourself when you are put in situations in which you do not have all of the control. When it comes to anti-aging, or when it comes to content creation and building that niche, building that following, and having that consistency, what we really are looking for at the very base of all of these routines, of all of these, habits of, self-care, and I don't even want to call it self-care, because self-care is great, but, human optimization, maybe I should say, of this anti-aging, what we're really turning towards is control. What we really want is control. We want control over our appearance, control over our following, control over our fate. But I feel like when you are able to let go of that, when you are able to appreciate that things will change and you will grow from that, and there is beauty in the unknown, there is beauty in the transient, there is beauty in the imperfect, that's where your confidence lies. Confidence doesn't come from consistent wins. It doesn't come from consistent slays. It doesn't come from consistent success. What it really actually leads to is fear. Fear of losing that niche, fear of losing that formula, fear of losing this particular form that you are in, that might change with age, that might get withered with age. It is fear that is the underlying emotion here. It's almost like a blemish on a freshly painted nail. But confidence is actually built from failures. It's built from that weatheredness. It's built from that change and that shift and the pivots that you make that lead you to new conclusions you wouldn't even have thought of. Just like we talked about in the last episode, or a couple weeks ago, where when you think about how when you work out, what you feel is pain, but you're getting stronger. And when you are learning, you feel dumb, but you're getting smarter. The same thing is true for your confidence. The same thing is true for Wabi Sabi, because when you are able to embrace age, when you are able to embrace death, when you're able to embrace transition, you realize that this current form isn't all that you have to offer. There is wisdom to come with each failure. There is wisdom to come with each change. Growth comes when you find an imperfection and you dedicate yourself to working on it. The other thing that comes to mind when I was thinking about embracing imperfection is that art requires us to fail. When we think about Wisdom K, do we really think that he got to where he is by making, safe choices, by trying to, do what has been done before and sticking to the formula and sticking to what he knew? No. It's impossible to use what's come before you and end up with a different product. It's impossible to think of, I'm going to follow this exact formula. I'm going to do what everything is expected of me. I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do and end up different from where you started. That's impossible. Art requires us to fail. It requires us to do something that's unexpected. And I feel like that is the gift and that is the beauty in imperfection. Something else that I really loved from the School of Life History of Ideas video was that they said, our notions of beauty are relative and open to change. This is also something that we really, really need to think about when it comes to our, content creation, as well as, anti-aging. I'm sure there are more examples. They're the only ones I can think of right now. But when we're looking at content creation, for example, and, what comes to mind is actually a quote. I'm not sure who it was from, but somebody was saying that when you are creating art, when you are creating, whether that's like a book or a poem or a piece of music or a film, the last person you should be thinking about is the audience. And I thought that was radical. I was thinking, the last person I should be thinking of is the audience. Are you sure? Aren't they the ones that are consuming it? Like, maybe they like should get at you the first say, you know, and what they want to see. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, can that really be true? But the audience is only going to know what they already know, right? They're not going to be the source of innovation, is essentially what I think this man was getting at. But I think that is so interesting because had Emma Chamberlain never posted a vlog, right? I feel like Emma Chamberlain's vlog style and her persona and her evolution in her online presence was something that we had never seen before. We had never seen a teenager amass such a following so rapidly and with such grace, and everybody, you know, loved her. We all loved her. We all thought we were best friends with her. That was almost like a new type of relationship that I feel like was quite novel to her. And how can we have even conceptualized and asked? The key here, I think, is the audience doesn't know what to ask for. And I think the same is true when you're thinking about, you know, aging. When we see beautiful people with long gray hair, we're not thinking, oh my gosh, like they've got gray hair, like that's horrible. Like we should all want to stay in our youth and just like stay, you know, where we're at. And I feel like TikTok is one of the greatest places when it comes to appreciation for age, because I think there are so many older people who are so unafraid of being themselves online. I mean, I'm sure I've seen a get dressed with me of an older couple, and, you know, they were like, this is my outfit. I'm like, this is me in 60 years. We have this new appreciation for it because we're now seeing it. And it's something that we would have, if you had asked me I forgot how old I was. It's like 15 years ago. I'm like, I was about 8 years old. I'm like, that might not be the best example. But if you'd asked me maybe 10 years ago, do I want to see an older like couple get ready with me? I would have said no. Like, why would I want to see that? Like, what's the fun in that? You know, what's that adding to my life? But no, it's adding a lot. The thing is, we don't know what we're going to find beautiful. We don't know what it might shock us and what might change the trajectory of our understanding of beauty until we see it. And so we need to remain unafraid of transition. We need to remain unafraid of change, because there is beauty in change, and that is the crux of Wabi Sabi. Now, another video that I watched was 6 Simple Wabi Sabi Habits That Bring Beauty and Peace to Your Life by S02E36. And I thought that one of them was really interesting, and that was to experience inconvenience. Now, I loved this one because I feel like we are so used to the expected. We're so used to our routines. We're so used to everything happening exactly the way it was planned to happen with no hiccups. And I feel like it kind of has made us soft to the world, incapable of handling change, incapable of handling misfortune, and that it makes us even more fearful for any other type of change that could come about. And I loved this little piece of advice that he was saying: experience inconvenience. Go a stop further on your typical bus. You know, maybe walk a different way that you would typically walk. It might be a little bit longer of a journey, but, you know, just do it in a different way. Maybe, you know, don't go grocery shopping on your normally scheduled day and see what you come up with instead. I don't know. You can try to find this in your own particular way, but I thought it was a really interesting piece of advice because, I mean, it's not something that we want to do, obviously, but I think that there is really something to be learned from misfortune, and I think that will invite us to kind of look and appreciate the smaller moments and the more mundane moments when we are kind of forced to. But I think that's all I have for you guys today. I really invite you guys to look into it from the source, you know, from this YouTube channel, S02E36. Again, I'll put it up on the screen, as well as the History of Ideas Wabi Sabi, the School of Life, because I thought that was a great YouTube video as well, leaning into the entire history of it. I'm not a historian, so I don't trust myself to relay everything. But I really do invite you guys to try to look around and look at your imperfections as something to be grateful for and something that is here to teach us something. I don't think that we should be striving for this clean cut, clean girl, aesthetic, because at the end of the day, it almost sterilizes our humanhood. Another thing that comes to mind actually is, this is radical, but there was that movie, well, it was actually a book called Everything. And in that book, right, the girl was confined to her house, to her very sterile house, because her mom had told her that she had an autoimmune disease that made her body incapable of fighting any sort of bacteria at all, right? So like anybody who walked into the house had to sterilize themselves, their hands, their feet, their clothes, everything. And she was confined to this house. She could not leave the house. She'd never been outside, essentially, because the whole idea was that she would be incapable of fighting off any type of bacteria. So everything was completely sterile. She lived in a completely sterile environment. And what that led to was unhappiness. She was almost like, what is life about? And I feel like that is what we need to think about when it comes to our perception of imperfection and our perception of negative things, inconveniences, and melancholy in general. When you think of yin and yang, happiness has a place, but so does unhappiness. Perfection has a place, but so does imperfection. It all needs to stay. And we need to find our peace with that. Anyway, I hope that was sensical in any way. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. And don't forget to leave a comment or subscribe, like the video, please. Leave a review if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. That would also be greatly appreciated. Don't forget to reach out at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD. I post some clips on there, sometimes some announcements on my story on Instagram, and then at Sydney Jotita, at SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I very, very, very much enjoyed my time spending it with you on this lovely couch, and I will see you guys next Friday. Have a good weekend. Bye.